Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Butterfly Effect podcast, and today we are talking about whether choice-based games should have sequels. Now, in the year just gone, we've obviously had Life is Strange Double Exposure, which you could say is a bit of a carry-on from Life is Strange 1, and because of that ending at the end of Until Dawn Remastered, it does imply there could well be an Until Dawn 2 of some kind. So mate, I'll throw it straight over to you. What is your take on this? Should there be sequels in choice-based games?
No.
And that's the end of the video, guys. Thanks for tuning in. No.
I mean,
to elaborate?
yeah, okay, I probably should. I mean, it's case by case, isn't it? Like, but more often or not, I see it as a cash grab. And if you are doing a sequel, you've got to really shake things up. You've got to take into account the original game, the essence of it, maybe even like the choices of how that game was left. And I just see more bad of it come than good, you know. And this, you know, like we're talking about choice-based games, but you see it in like movies, you know, like whether it's Jurassic Park or Star Wars, they will get a successful franchise and beat it like a dead horse because it's a surefire way to get money, because people will buy the game, us included. And I look at Double Exposure and just, for me, it did more harm than it did good. I look at Until Dawn, and that is a lightning in a bottle experience. It's a fantastic game. I just can't see Until Dawn 2 being successful. I really can't. And I just look at these projects and I don't know, I almost see them as an art form. And I just want there to be a game that finishes on a high note and is just left to ride into the sunset on a positive note. But we barely get that. And I can kind of separate it and almost pretend it didn't happen and think, in my mind, I'm just going to leave it where the first game ended it, for example. But yeah, like, I'm not close enough to the idea. It can happen, it can be successful. No successful kind of like ones are really like sticking to my mind at the minute to an extent. But yeah, I just think sequels do more harm than good.
I've got to admit, I'm in the same camp. I'm going to refer to obviously The Walking Dead. Now, obviously it's not a sequel because it's part of a series, but we have covered The Walking Dead Season 2 on here previously, and we know how that ends. You can end up on your own, you can end up with Jane, you can end up with Kenny. And the way that it was then handled in Season 3 felt completely undermining of what players had previously done in the previous game. It was almost a surefire way of, okay, we've wrote ourselves into a corner here, boys, we're going to have to quickly address this. And it was just bosh, kill off Kenny at the side of the road. Bosh, Jane commits suicide. Do you know what I mean? It was almost as if like it didn't really matter. It's like, this is a bit awkward, we need to move this on. And it just takes away from the choice element of what, you know, that's what these games are built on. So that, I think, is one reason. And actually probably the main reason. But then even like when you're looking at, say, Double Exposure, it's the same thing with like Chloe and Max, isn't it? Like you go into Life is Strange 1, you have that ending, you know, are they together, are they not? And then it just starts you off at a point where they're split up. And it's like, well, you know, you say that you're going to honour it, but you really haven't here. And I think it's then just, it detracts away from the first game in a way. And it comes back to the point that you said, mate. It feels therefore like a cash grab.
I fully agree. And you mentioned a big thing about the choice thing, and The Walking Dead's such a good example because, yeah, they create 5 endings, put themselves in a corner. They're like, well, we're not going to create 5 games. We'll create one. So we'll just make all those 5 choices meaningless, and we'll start everyone at square one, and we'll just provide them a flashback of what happened, which got us on the course we did, which in my opinion is just very poor. Like, it's better than nothing, but it's just a really bad decision to make. Like, why would you end Walking Dead Season 2 that way if you're going to start Walking Dead Season 3 the manner you have? My solution to the whole thing is, like, if you are going to go down this road of wanting to kind of like make another game in a similar light, I think prequels are a safer way to go, because at least with a prequel, you almost like the fans and the developers have an expectation and they know where it's going to end. It's got to end where the first game started, right? But I look at Life is Strange Before the Storm. I'm a big fan of that game, and I know it doesn't have the power, and I know, like, you know, certain characters aren't great, and, you know, you could argue maybe the ending's a little weak potentially, but, like, I don't really see a lot of people complaining about Before the Storm. You've, like, wanted to make another game out of Life is Strange 1 in the world of Arcadia Bay. You've given us Before the Storm. We got to learn, like, more about, like, Chloe Price, what she went through after Max left. You got to find out, you know, who Rachel Amber was as a person. And I just thought Before the Storm was brilliant. And I feel like, yeah, if you're going to do another game, prequels are a lot safer than sequels, in my opinion.
It's strange, right? Because what I'm about to say almost leads to the same conclusion. But I do think you're right. And actually, because you know from Life is Strange 1 what ultimately happens with Rachel Amber, I think it makes Before the Storm more powerful, because the choices that you make, I know it ultimately leads to Rachel, you know, dying and whatnot. And that does contradict what I'm saying, because you're almost, in a chronological sense, with the Walking Dead thing, you know that Kenny's always going to die, but obviously that serves as a sequel, right? Whereas Before the Storm is more of a prequel. But for some reason it seems to hit harder more when it's a prequel. There's that feeling of like you're coming to, there's an inevitability to that particular story arc. Whereas when you're going into a new game in the form of a sequel, you're thinking, oh, what are the possibilities here? And then you get slammed with, oh yeah, they died. Let's just get rid of that and move on. So yeah, I do think that actually, yeah, that the prequel idea, it just in practice works better.
Because you'll look at like a Double Exposure, and the Chloe Price injustice is completely like justified, right? Like the way they handled it was very poor, and lots of people came out that game feeling really robbed and betrayed. And I feel when you do a prequel, yeah, like the conclusion has to be somewhat predictable, because we know how the story ends, because like we started Life is Strange 1 in a certain place and we know it has to end there. But when you're on this even playing field where the player and the developers like know what's going to happen, you're not insulting like the player or the gamer's intelligence. But, you know, although like it throws choices out the window a little bit, you can still do so much with the world. Like we had Rachel, you know, and like we got to see like Chloe perform in a play, for Christ's sake. That was quite fun. So I just feel like, yeah, prequels are like the safer option, and you can still do a lot with them. So yeah, like I guess like my message to any kind of like game developer that wants to kind of, you know, like get money and revitalize, you know, like a big title that, you know, had lots of success, leave the art how it ended, and, you know, find other ways to explore it, and prequels are just a surefire way to do that.
I'm now going to lean into Until Dawn, mate, because we've spoke about prequels, but they probably can't do that because of the impatient already exists, right? Yeah. So if we're looking at a sequel, so Until Dawn 2, what's your thoughts on that? If there is an Until Dawn 2, what should it look like?
Yeah, I mean, we had Brian that came on the channel and pitched a really good idea about how like scientists have got hold of Wendigos and experiments go wrong, and you can do a lot with that. And I think a comment pointed out that is literally a plot for Resident Evil 2, but, you know, like that's because it's successful and it is like a sure proven way to make, you know, a title work. The idea I had would be to kind of throw the horror out the window a little bit, make it more action oriented, maybe make it like The Descent 2, where Sam goes back with maybe like a little army faction to try and like get Josh back or whatever, something along those lines. I'm unsure. But again, it's just so difficult because the way Until Dawn ended is different for every player. Some people had 3 characters survive, some people had all 8, some people killed off everyone, you know. And like, you can't really make an Until Dawn 2, like, realistically, because like, already we've got like, you know, the conclusion of Sam wakes up in a bed. Certain people killed off Sam in their playthrough, right? So already you've pretty much betrayed, you know, the fan base who had that as an ending. So with Until Dawn specifically, I think the moment they made that scene and made that executive decision, they painted themselves into a corner, and I feel like it's probably only really going to go fairly downhill from that, because it is going to take a miracle for them to create a game that is as good as Until Dawn. And I don't think they're going to make a game that is as good and not better at all. You know, like Until Dawn 1 is lightning in a bottle, and Until Dawn 2, it's just not looking good. Like, I just can't see it going anywhere near the caliber. And I know it's not even up yet, and you're going to say, oh, we'll give it a chance. I just don't see how they can. I really don't.
No. I mean, I'm the exact same. I don't like the fact that, as you mentioned already, Sam can die, and then in the next game, Sam is going to be alive. It's what we were mentioning earlier with The Walking. It just completely robs you of your gameplay, and it just makes it feel less important. I think the only way it could really work in my eyes as a sequel is that you take ingredients from the first game and you just scatter them in. So perhaps you could have Wendigos as the villain in Until Dawn 2, and you could, like, you know, whether it's in a different location or whatever, maybe even have certain characters that have been mentioned in Until Dawn pop up, whether it's like the guy that escaped, you know, from that clue that you found, whether it's like Josh, Hannah and Beth's mum and dad. Do you know what I mean? Maybe their characters in it, or do you get what I mean? I think as soon as you start involving the characters from the first one, you're then treading on the toes of players' playthroughs, and I just think that that's wrong. So, you know, maybe like little Easter eggs here and there, I think a lot of players would enjoy, but I just wouldn't want to go as far as just saying, oh, okay, so, you know, so-and-so survived and this is gonna, you know, roll into the next one.
For sure, like, if I had to do anything related to Until Dawn, and I've seen people pitch this for like what they should have done with the movie, and again, it goes back to my point, do a prequel. And I know you have the Impatient, but we have a whole story there of miners getting trapped and the Wendigo curse happening from that. Just, you know, like, and it's pretty much given in like clues that we examine. Why not just make a video game for that? Show us what happened to these miners, having the first miner that's trapped and has to, you know, resort to cannibalism. I would play that game, to be honest. I doubt it would be good as Until Dawn 1, but there's a potential video game waiting there, and I would have rather have seen that than potential, you know, the potential like horror show and like, you know, pull up we're probably going to see from Until Dawn 2, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm thinking even going into, we revert back to double exposure now, the end choice where you accept or reject Safi's offer, right? She's got a superpower, she's going to go off, she's going to do some badass shit, she's going to, do you know what I mean? She wants Max at her side. Whatever you pick there, it's like, okay, so how is that going to follow into the next game? You know, because if you're then going to set them up as antagonists, then something went wrong along the way. How are you going to show that? And based on their form of what they did with Chloe, it doesn't exactly fill the player with much confidence. So, you know, I just, yeah, on the side of caution, I'll just be like, let sleeping dogs lie. A standalone game is a lot more safer. If you're going to do a sequel, just make sure it doesn't trample on the toes of players' choices in the previous one.
100% agreed, mate.
So there we go. That's what we think, but what do you guys think? Should choice-based games have sequels? Let us know in the comments and we will read and reply to them. Anything else from you, lad?
Not at all. Thank you guys for watching.
Catch you later.
See you in the next one, guys.